Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Food for Thought channel. If you're new here, thank you for finding me. This is actually an episode of my series I have called Kungfusations, where I sit down with someone from either the Kung Fu cinema community, maybe a movie director, usually it's like a YouTube movie director. I'm not going big. I'm not talking to, John Woo on this channel. But maybe, in the future, who knows? But someone from the Asian cinema community, I sit down with them. We talk about movies. We talk about their experience with the genre, how they got into it, etc., etc. And I want to go ahead and just jump into this right away by bringing on my guest, who I am very, very, very honored to have. We've kind of spoken back and forth on Instagram. We've been on one video in the past together, and I think this is going to be a great conversation. So I would like to, with no further ado, introduce the Fanatical Dragon.
Hello.
How you doing?
Very, very well. Delighted to be here.
Wonderful. Stoked. Lovely to have you. Yeah, I think this is fantastic. It's always nice to speak to someone who. Well, I don't know. Actually, this is an interesting question that I'm going to kick off with. Actually, I have a question before I kick off with my big question. Yeah, I'm already muddled. I know. So this is kind of a comical question, but you've had people on your channel that you've had Kenji Tanigaki on your channel, which is unbelievable. Yeah. Recently, you've absolutely been nailing it by having both Frank Jeng and Michael Worth on your channel, which is unbelievable. So my question to you is, are they always okay with the accent, or do they struggle?
Totally fine. The one I was most worried about was probably Kenji.
Yeah.
And he was perfect. Or he was... I suspect a couple of times he didn't know exactly what I was talking about, but we kind of got there through a mixture of a little bit of sign language, and because it was quite specific stuff. But yeah, and my accent's not super broad. Like I'm not
right.
I'm East Coast of Scotland.
Okay.
And I lived in the States for like 6 years, so my accent's kind of yeah. We can get into that.
Oh, I did not know that. Yeah, I didn't know that.
I've got like a very weird, almost slightly telephone version of a Scottish accent. Edinburgh accent's always a bit more kind of like, I would say, I don't want to say clearer, but I'd say maybe like less pronounced than the West Coast. The West Coast's like super Scottish accent, and then my folks hail from the very northeast of Scotland, so like close to Aberdeenshire, and it's impenetrable up there, particularly once you step outside of Aberdeen, because Aberdeen's got lots and lots of kind of people from other places. There's a big university town,
right? But
once you get into the the sticks, which is where my folks were from, half the people I met growing up, I had no fucking clue what they were talking about.
That's
and
great.
To this day, I can't understand. It's basically like a mixture of Doric. I don't know how much Doric stuff you've ever heard.
Not much. No, I don't.
Doric's kind of like not Gaelic, but Doric would be like sort of its own separate kind of Scots slang. So in Edinburgh, if someone was asking where you were staying, they would say like, "Oh, hey, how are you? Where are you staying?" And Doric would be like, "Fill you bin," and you'd be like, "What?"
Okay. Yes. Okay.
So very different. So thankfully, I think being a bit more travelled, my accent's for the most part easy to understand, or so far has been.
Good to hear. Good to hear. I'm glad you've had no problem. I've had no problems either so far. But living obviously in the US, that I do, I still meet people every week that still cannot kind of manage certain words that I say, even though I think I pronounce them perfectly.
Yeah, it's so clear because like you're from Wales, right? And I don't detect any of that sort of Welsh lilt.
I am very lucky, similar to you actually. I'm very lucky in that I was born and raised in North Wales.
Okay.
And the tip top of North Wales, I was actually born and raised I was raised in a town called Prestatyn, which was actually on the northern coastline of Wales. And my accent is, I don't want to say this because it makes me feel terrible because I hate it, but it's definitely more English than Welsh. Not something I'm proud of, but it's the way just being in North Wales, kind of on the more northeast. I think we sound more English, and then Northwest you start getting kind of heavily Welsh. But yeah, I don't speak Welsh. I don't sound Welsh, so people often don't think I'm from Wales. Although I will strongly tell them that I am from Wales. I'm very proud of being from Wales. I just don't speak the lingo. So yes, no South Walian dialects or tones here. Thankfully, I would definitely struggle more in this country if I did sound like that. But
yeah. Yeah, because I mean, even with my accent, I struggled a bit when I stayed there.
Yeah.
So I people generally either thought I was Irish, occasionally Australian, which I never, that boggled my mind, right? But I think it was just they heard it was different. So
Yeah.
by about the second year, because I was there for 6 years altogether, by about the second year, if I was phoning up for a pizza, I'd have to adopt a really bad pretend like American accent just to try and basically get the order. Otherwise, they thought I was taking the piss. And I think weird. So I'm interested to know how you. Whereabouts in the States are you?
I'm actually in Maryland.
Okay,
So East Coast.
Close to Washington.
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Very much so. I'm about, if I hop on a train, I'm literally 10 minutes away from DC, so
Cool.
not far at all. I when I first came here, I actually lived in Chicago for a number of years, and then I came out to the East Coast. And I think I get Australian a lot in my work when I speak to like clients. They often think I'm Australian. I've had South African a number of times.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, which I find interesting. And the weirdest one I've ever had, someone swore down I was French.
Okay.
Which I don't get at all.
No.
French is beyond me. That's confusing. But South African, I guess. Well, you know how Americans are.
No, kind of. But I think you hit your A's pretty hard, and your A's don't become I's, and that's the thing that always catches me with South African accents. So they wouldn't say black; they say blick.
Yes, exactly.
It's a weird tone.
It's the whole "I'm from South Africa"
Yes.
kind of. Yeah, and I'm definitely not that. I think it's interesting though, because I think talking about accents, having lived in this country for a long time, I think this might even be my 20th year being in here.
Oh shit! Okay.
I've been here for quite some time. Luckily I've maintained the majority of my accent from my homeland. But I think what changes over time for me is not the actual accent, but the cadence.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes go up at the end of my sentences, like Americans or some places in America all want to do. So my dialect changes, and I've tried my cadence changes, and I've tried so long. For the longest time, I tried not to use any Americanisms. So I didn't want to use soda. There were a whole bunch of words that I really wanted to avoid, and it just over the last few years, it broke me, and I finally started using certain terms. And the worst one, I think, is I finally gave in and started using tomatoes. Which really, there's something, being in this country for so long, there's something that slightly breaks inside you when you start using Americanisms or American words. But sometimes I will never say banana instead of banana. It's just, some things I'll just never do.
I'm assuming that chips for you will always be like fried bits of potato. French fries are chips.
Absolutely. Just today, I'm proud to say I bought a bag of crisps this morning, and I loudly announced that I bought crisps to my wife. I was like, I'm getting these crisps today. But occasionally, in order to help myself, I will say chips if it's needed, if it's in the right environment, and I know that this person's going to struggle if I say crisps.
When in Rome.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was the first question I had for you, but I have kind of the core of the conversation, and that is, how did you get into Asian cinema? When did you get into Asian cinema? I wonder, because you are a fellow Brit, and I wonder if your journey was similar to mine in any way.
I suspect probably, because I think I've got a few years on you, but we're pretty close in age, right? You just had your birthday. Happy birthday!
Thank you so much.
And that was your 42nd.
42nd, yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I've got 6 years on you, so I'm 48 this year.
Okay.
So I think kind of growing up, I think probably very similar to me. Were only 3 channels when I was very, very small, right? And no real access to kind of anything beyond what was being shown. Like, it was kind of, even we're both old enough to be pre-VCR, right? So in the very, very early days, there was no video rental stores.
Yep.
That came up when I was probably about 8-ish, I think, 8 or 9. We got our first video VCR player, which we had to rent because they were so expensive that you couldn't afford to buy. Like, no one could afford to buy them at that point.
No.
So you rented them from like Telecare or one of these places for a couple of quid a month.
Nice.
And then video stores started exploding open, right? And that kind of really opened up the world to kind of start getting stuff. But before then, I think probably I can remember two kind of big highlights. One obviously is Bruce Lee, and I think the first one that I saw probably was Enter the Dragon on some TV screening. I've tried many times to work out when that would have been, because I know that it was screened multiple times, but I can't remember the first time. The other one, weirdly, was James Bond, and James Bond was a huge deal in my household, particularly with my dad.
Okay.
Because he was a local boy. Sean Connery was also born in Edinburgh. So I think kind of our whole house would stop if there was a Sean Connery Bond film on. And You Only Live Twice was the first time I can ever remember seeing Japan in a movie, and certainly seeing ninjas in a movie, right? And that was kind of like totally caught my imagination, like the kind of the pagoda architecture and stuff in there was like so unlike anything that I was exposed to kind of growing up, and it really, really kind of caught my imagination, so much so that I desperately wanted to be a ninja for about the first probably 10 to 12 years of my life, even to the extent of going to ninjutsu classes, but we can get into that later, because I think they were very questionable, and probably some dude who was grossly not qualified to be looking after a small group of children, let alone charging them money. But yeah, so I think kind of You Only Live Twice and Bruce Lee was kind of like ground zero. And then as soon as we got a VCR player, that kind of was the beginning of me starting to kind of really actually dive in, and was consuming anything I could possibly get my hands on. At that point, probably mostly Hong Kong based, because of just what was in the shops. So there was probably a mix of bluesploitation. Went through all the Bruce Lee movies that were on the old original kind of VHS rentals. I don't remember seeing Shaw's quite that early. That would come a little bit later, but definitely the kind of first couple of Jackie Chan's were in the kind of VHS rental shop days. But fairly quickly, I was desperate to start working. So by the time I was haranguing my folks for more pocket money constantly, and my folks were always in the mindset of like, we can't just give you money, you have to earn it. Right? Of course. And so I would do chores for them, but then as soon as I was old enough, it was a time when you could quite easily get a job in Scotland when you were about 11 or 12. You could get a paper round and go out in all weather. So I did that, and then can actually start buying my own VHS tapes. And so probably the first big two things happened quite similar to each other that had a massive, huge influence onto kind of shaping my sort of young adolescence and shaping me as a person, right? And they weirdly both came from the same point of origin. And it was one guy. It was J. Soul Kane. It's a name that I don't know if you're familiar with.
I'm not. No.
I think you're gonna kind of jump in at a certain point, because he had two different interests. Right, one was making music, and he made music under the name of Depth Charge. Okay. Which was kind of like if you took all the rapping off Wu-Tang Clan stuff. So if you just had basically instrumental hip hop loaded with kung fu samples, that was essentially what Depth Charge's stuff was, right? So he brought out an album called The Nine Deadly Venoms, which was a huge record for me when it came out. One track in particular called Shaolin Buddha Finger, which I think was my first track of his that I heard, which just heavily samples Shaolin versus Lama.
And this is before Wu-Tang?
I think probably around about the same time. That's 1994, I think that album came out.
Oh, so a little after, right? Was 36 Chamber 92?
I think so, yeah.
93, somewhere around there,
that sort of time. But by the time that album came out, I was weirdly already familiar with him through a different way, because he ran the Made in Hong Kong VHS label.
Okay. Right? So, now I'm comfortable now. Yes, I know where we are. I know where we are now.
So I think by this point I had my little paper rounds by the time that the first couple of their tapes came out. And I can remember, I think if I'm remembering rightly, their first few tapes, The Killer was like the second release they ever put out. And they also did, I don't know how well the camera will pick this up, but they put out Drunken Master, Snake and Eagle Shadow, Five Venoms, Better Tomorrow, Mad Monkey Kung Fu, Moon Warriors, Tiger on the Beat, As Tears Go By, Invincible Shaolin, Dirty Hole, and A Better Tomorrow 3. Right, so basically all of my seminal introductions into Jackie's best early movies, into Shaw Brothers, into John Woo, all came from that dude's label, right? Because I was able to race out and pick up the VHSs. And between me and my friends, we couldn't afford to buy them all, so we would split. So like I was doing Shaw Brothers stuff, and he was doing more like Heroic Bloodshed stuff. But it meant between the two of us, we could get all the tapes they put out, and then we just swap them back and forth and watch them on a heavy repeat, right? So kind of really that was the first thing that kind of whet my interest. And then this is all pre-internet. So dived into like trying to find basically any information about more stuff that was out there. So kind of a couple of key books, one by He Who Shall Not Be Named, a kind of Hong Kong action cinema book. And that kind of basically gave me a list of other titles, particularly because Leung really, really caught my attention. Like Mad Monkey Kung Fu and Dirty Ho made a nuclear blast effect on me when I first saw them.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy that Lau Kar-leung is obviously one of the most legendary directors of all time? We can all say that. Anyone in the Kung Fu cinema, Asian cinema community knows that. But isn't it interesting how even at a young age, that even I can speak for myself, right? When I was young, I didn't know, I wouldn't call myself, when I was young, I wasn't a cinephile. I wasn't, I was just a guy who watched movies, a young kid even that watched movies. But even then, knowing nothing about camera work, cinematography, even knowing nothing about choreography, and we're talking, let's say I was 14 years old. Even back then, I watched a Lau Kar-leung movie and went,
this is something special.
This is important. This is something really special. And I think there's something wonderful about that he can speak to cinephiles that know everything about every technical aspect of filmmaking, and then speak to people that know absolutely nothing. And it's just, there's something magical about Pops and what he brings, or what he brung, I should say, that really covers every aspect of the film watcher, right?
Oh, completely.
It's so
completely. But I think it's a shame because so many people hold him up in really high regard, rightly so, as being maybe kind of one of the purest actual martial artists who was working at Shaw Brothers, in terms of he kind of wasn't just screen martial arts. He was obviously kind of like, the legacy goes right the way back to Wong Fei Hung, really. So I mean, he real direct lineage back to a real 100% bona fide master. But I still think not enough people kind of recognize how an amazing a filmmaker, a director he was. Particularly, you see it in his transitions so much, like, because I know so many of those things he was working out on the day. Because there's no way an editor could create a lot of the kind of transitions that he did. That was all coming from him on set, and how incredibly inventive he was at kind of moving the narrative, moving the story along. Never gets enough shout outs. He was an absolute master. I've said this a few times, and sometimes depending on who I'm speaking to, I get relentlessly slagged for it, or sometimes I'll get a high five. But for me, he's basically Hong Kong's Kurosawa, right? I would hold him in that higher regard as a filmmaker.
You'd get a crisp high five from me on that one.
I would. Thank you, sir. But yeah, I think he's incredible. I think you could tell he got so frustrated under Chang Cheh. And I love Chang Cheh's movies, but Chang Cheh, particularly once he got into his slightly more advanced years, was kind of going through the motions. So if you got a really good script from Ni Kuang, you get a really good Chang Cheh movie. But a lot of the time, you just got Chang Cheh making his paycheck that day. He wasn't really hungry at that point, because I think he was quite comfortable as being the top guy at that point. And so for Lau Kar-leung, underneath him, chomping at the bit with ideas, and probably being like, just nah, and constantly being kind of basically in a way kept back. It's weird if you read Chang Cheh's book, which I know you now have.
I can actually, if I lean over here,
go for it, grab it,
and put my headphones back in. I actually have it here, and I owe it entirely to you. You actually
I just pointed you in the right direction.
Yeah, you pointed me in the direction of this. I never knew that I could even dream of getting my hands on this, and you happened to point me to a very specific website. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't 100% sure I'd ever see that book. It was the whole process of purchasing this book was very, I won't say risky. Well, it definitely wasn't risky, but it was definitely unique. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the book did take 6 months to get to me.
Yeah. It can take a while.
I mean, I haven't read it yet. It's the next book on my list, so I haven't actually read it yet, but I cannot wait to jump into this. I honestly cannot wait. I
would preface it by take it with a healthy dose of salt in places.
Yeah,
I adore Chang Cheh, and I would never throw shade at him ever for anything, but he does like to take credit for everything under the sun and everyone's achievements, even if it's publicly known that was still not the case, right? I think he took out a billboard in Hong Kong and against Lau Kar-leung after Lau Kar-leung went out on his own, right? But to read the book, you would believe that he was behind Lau Kar-leung as a sort of gentle, fatherly patron, supporting him in every decision he made.
Yes,
I think the reality is a little bit different, right?
We know that is not the case.
Yeah, sadly. So.
Yeah, I love Chang Cheh too. I think he's wonderful, and I think when he's on that day, when he's turned on that day, I mean, by turned on, I mean,
I know what you mean.
zeroed in that day, he really is capable of something special. But like you mentioned earlier, when he's just like, well, time to get my paycheck, he kind of sits back. I mean, you can even see that in the, dare I say, a lot of the Venom mob films, where he kind of sits back and goes, all right, well, this is kind of a movie. We're just going to do it. And then Venom mob, do your thing. And it's all about them doing what they do. But sometimes, every now and again, he really does deliver. Yeah, very interesting. But I think you're right. Lau Kar-leung is just, may I say, many steps above Chang Cheh, in my opinion. Although, like you mentioned earlier, there are people that will come at you and say Chang Cheh was infinitely better than Lau Kar-leung, which is, well, it's opinion, I guess.
Completely, totally, and I think I love them both in a way, but I'll always love Lau Kar-leung more. And I think it's heartbreaking to me how his opportunities got too scarce in his more advancing years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure everyone watching this has seen Pedicab Driver and adores Pedicab Driver. That cameo really was with Sammo Hung throwing him a bone, because at that point he couldn't really get work.
Right.
People thought he was already dead because he'd had cancer. And so basically people were like, oh yeah, that dude that I don't even know if he's still alive. So that was his kind of almost like a refreshing calling card for the industry to say, like, I can still do this stuff, right? In terms of throw me a bone and I can do it. So I'm so stoked that Samuel brought him back for that. But we're digressing into detail, and I'll jump back a tiny little bit, because there's an important next step after our Made in Hong Kong days, right? Because that was all still kind of when we were very much firmly in the VHS era. DVD opened up the rest of the world for me when it came round. And that's probably, I think, if I can remember rightly, the first time I bought a DVD player, it was, I'm sure I'm probably still paying it off on interest-free credit, because DVD players back then were not cheap in the early days.
No,
right?
They were not. Were not.
It was The Matrix. It was the very first Matrix movie that when I saw that in cinema, which I did, I think 15 times in its first kind of opening sort of 2 months.
Nice.
Convinced me that it was time to start getting my ass in gear and going to film school, because at that point I'd slipped into working at a music store. Actually, I was selling guitars and keyboards and shit.
Oh, okay.
But seeing The Matrix was like, all right, okay, now finally America and Hong Kong are at one. So now's the time right for me to go off and learn how to make movies, and then I can make my fortune, because I'd amassed all this knowledge from watching all the Hong Kong cinema that I had, that when I saw The Matrix for the first time, it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm seeing great choreography for the first time. It was like, oh my God, I'm seeing Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne doing a kind of half-assed version of Fist of Legend choreography.
Yes.
Cool, right? And it was great to see it in there, and I love the first Matrix movie. But yeah, that was kind of like a big deal when it came around, and so made me buy a DVD player. And then Tartan Video, I'm sure you remember. Tartan Video really started diving into other areas of the world. So they started putting out a bunch of South Korean cinema. Heavily into that. A bunch of Japanese cinema, particularly low budget stuff like kind of Versus and Princess Blade and all these sort of movies that were so cool when they came around first time round. And so I was kind of just consuming absolutely everything I possibly could. Took me a little while to get into film school, because there's not a huge amount of places for those courses in Scotland. So I think the course I went to, I think we had 5 applications for every place they had. So okay. 60 places every year would be ingested into a 4-year course, and they were getting 500-600 applications every year. And I'd been out of school for a long time by that point. I left school really early, so I think I was maybe early to mid 20s when I finally got my arse in gear to go. So Matrix was 99, so I would have been 23, 24 when The Matrix came out, and was practicing martial arts and stuff at that point. I remember my entire martial arts club. I was Kukso 1. I did like Korean martial arts. Yeah. And our entire class made pilgrimages to go and see that movie multiple times.
Of course.
But as I was kind of fairly active and a slimmer, fitter man than I am now, and decided that I would eventually go to film school. Took me a couple of years to get in. So I think I was maybe 26 when I started year one. Had to get a job to support myself going through uni, and got a job in a secondhand used DVD and CD store. So for my entire university kind of course, which was 4 years, I had just completely open access to as many
Right.
movies as I could.
Ideal, right?
Totally. And first pick of anything that people were trading in.
Wonderful.
That I think it's when my collection was at its biggest. So I think by the time I left that shop, I probably had about 5,000 or 6,000 DVDs.
Wow.
Which I then promptly sold all off when I moved to the States, right? I don't think I kept a single one. Like literally everything got sold. But yeah, over that sort of period, so kind of like from time that I was first born to consciously watching stuff through to kind of mid-20s, that was pretty much the evolution arc of kind of watching the stuff that I was watching, and then just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper into Asian cinema and less into American cinema as time went on.
That's a really our stories are similar but have one very distinct kind of factor that differentiates them, and that is, I think you had, from the sounds of it, more, I don't know what the word is, more access to movies. In a way, I'll say more access, and maybe you had more of a quote unquote community than I did. I felt growing up and being an Asian, well, actually, I won't even call myself an Asian cinema fan back then. It was strictly martial arts for me back then. And being a martial arts cinema fan, I had no one. I had no one interested in it. I mean, I'm from a tiny town in North Wales, and no one was interested. My brother occasionally would be into watching one with me, but nothing at all. We got no movies to watch, like no movies nearby that I could buy, rent. Basically, I could rent Cynthia Rothrock films and the occasional Jackie Chan film. But yeah, my story is just, I've always regretted a little bit not having the opportunity to kind of dig deep. I think, I would get on the train and go an hour and a half into England to go to the local HMV. To dig into the made in Hong Kong films and see what I could buy. And especially also back then, it was kind of, for me, it was the Wu-Tang collection films, all the old school films. But I always felt, I won't say alone in my love for the genre, but maybe a little secluded. In that I was never able to really fully branch out and really, to be honest, it's been the same for my, I'm not, God, this is beginning to sound like a sob story.
No, it's not, dude. It's your journey, right?
Yeah, in my entire life, I've never really had someone close to me that has liked the Asian cinema genre like I do. And I've never had a community, which is why, of course, now I am always online, always talking to people online, because I finally found my place. I finally found my people, even. And I think it's wonderful. But yeah, growing up, I never really had that. And like you, I had a paper round early on, and I would save, it'd take me 2 weeks to go and buy one VHS, and, and no internet. So right back then, it was a gamble. It was an absolute gamble. I stand by the fact that my first purchase of a VHS was kind of both wonderful and exciting, and I was giddy at doing it, but it was also entirely eye-opening and kind of really taught me something, because the first VHS I ever bought, Kung Fu film, I bought Shaolin Red Master, which, if you know, is not the greatest Kung Fu film of all time.
Pretty obscure.
Yes, exactly. It was it made in Hong Kong? I think it was made in Hong Kong. And I picked that one up, and I took it home and I watched it, and I said to myself, I was just like, okay, but I'd seen Drunken Master. I was like, this one is not quite as good. And I knew then that somehow I had to research, and I had to do that whole thing where you have like a family tree where you start with Jackie. Then you finally come across Sammo Hung. You're like, well, now I can focus on Sammo Hung and see what he's made. Oh, there's a guy called Leung. Let's see what he's made. And you kind of jump from person to person. I mean, that's how it is now for a lot of people, but that's how it was back then for me. It was like, I bought who's in Shaolin Red Master? Chi Quan Chun. I bought a Chi Quan Chun film, and I was just like, okay, this guy, maybe not for me, which is kind of ironic considering he's in so many Shaw Brothers films and he's in superb films.
Mhm.
But I was like, this guy isn't it. He's
It's
not.
weird how many of his non-Shaw's movies were kicking about at that point, like an Iron Monkey and I think
Yes.
are we talking about the same dude?
No, that's
No, that's Chang Chang-tai.
yeah, Chang Chang-tai.
You're talking about the guy who was in. Yeah, I know exactly who you mean. The guy from like Golden Mask and
yes, and he's in Iron Neck Lee. I think that's him, isn't it? Iron Neck
yeah,
Lee as well.
yeah.
And that was a VHS early on that I remember seeing a lot of Iron Neck Lee. But he's in films like The Shaolin Temple, the 1976 Shaolin
and
Temple.
like Boxer's Rebellion and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. So he's a legend in his own right. But this was long before I even knew what Shaw Brothers was. Back then, I literally was going off. I mean, obviously, I hope everyone knows that is familiar with my channel. I'm a long-term hip hop head, and the listening to Wu-Tang kind of helped me out a little bit because I was just like, Wu-Tang. That means if I buy a Wu-Tang VHS, it has to be good. Not the greatest rule to live by, but you know,
I'm sure because there was that old kind of Wu-Tang collection version of Shaolin versus Wu-Tang, and I'm sure that must have been a revelation for you when you got it and were like, finally, it's the source. There's so many samples from that movie.
That's exactly funny. You should bring that up. Every single time we stumbled across a sample on a VHS, he was just like, "Oh, this film's good. This one's good," because I know RZA liked this film and put it on a CD, which means it must be good. And you know, finding stuff like Five Deadly Venoms back then and things like that, yeah, it was glorious. A good time. It was
my depth charge experience as well, and it became
that's awesome.
Because there's a weird thing that your brain goes through this weird backflip in a way that's almost impossible to replicate by anything else. Where, particularly if you're big into music, but if your brain's already rewired into kind of the cognition from a particular song, and then you, out of context from that bit of music that you listen to, you hear that little section. I used to get it with not just dialogue samples, but the samples in general, particularly from hip hop stuff. And this was way before the time that Who Sampled as a website was around, right? And there's like one of my sister's very early boyfriends when she was, I think she must have maybe been 16 or 17. He was a couple of years younger, which I remember being controversial at the time. But he was a massive stoner, and he would hang out with me quite a lot, usually because he would come round supposedly to go out with her and get too baked before coming round. She'd get really pissed off and go out with the rest of her friends and leave him at our place to sober up. So he would just hang out with me and like watch Red Dwarf or whatever was on TV at the time. Yeah. But he gave me an audio cassette at one point, which on one side had 3 Feet High and Rising by De La Soul, and on the other side had Tone Loc's first album.
Oh, nice.
Looked After Dark, right? So it was like two of my very first hip hop albums that I just listened to death, right? And I can remember years later when I'd moved to the States, being in Palm Springs beside a swimming pool and baking hot, like meltingly hot.
Yep.
And there's a sample in Cutting Rhythms that I'd always adored, right? But never knew where it was come from. And I don't know if you know that song, Cutting Rhythms.
I couldn't rap along with it, but I'm aware of the song.
Well, it's I'll send you a link after this, and you can listen to. But there's a massive sample in it from a section of Band on the Run, the Paul McCartney Wings song.
Oh, okay.
I was never a fan of, but that song came on the radio beside the pool at the place that I was staying at Palm Springs.
Oh, okay.
And it was like an electric shock went through my body, and it's like such a weird sensation. And so, I'm sure for you too, watching kung fu movies, when you actually heard where a little bit of dialogue had been lifted, it just boosted the whole thing up to this really weird extra sensory perception overload place.
It really did. It really did. I'm thankful to my brother. My brother, funny enough, a very similar story to yours almost. My brother was a huge stoner, huge stoner, and he would invite my mum would often not be in the house. She would work long hours, and then she'd often go out and kind of let her hair down at night. And he would invite all his friends over, and of course they'd just get super stoned and fall asleep. But they would always come over, and they would each have just either some kind of movie or some kind of cassette tape. And thankfully, it was a lot of the time like they would have kung fu films, but it would be kind of the ones that I already knew of or already seen, but sitting down with a bunch of stoners and watching it was always a fun experience. So I remember sitting down and watching Mystery of Chess Boxing with them, which was nice. But they introduced me to a lot of hip hop because early on they gave me Cypress Hill's second album, Black Sunday, and then he introduced me to Warren G, Dr. Dre, and Snoop Dogg, which was kind of my first big foray into hip hop. But yeah, once Wu-Tang came along and the movies coincided with the music, it was just it all meshed together. And finally seeing allow me to demonstrate the skill of Shaolin on VHS was just like, oh, I've reached the promised land. This is it. This is where I want to be moving forward. And,
how much older is your brother?
He's 3 years older.
Okay.
Exactly. Actually, he's born the same day as me. So
okay.
He's we're both born on June 14th, but 3 years apart, which is strange.
That's kind of crazy. Yeah.
Yes, 3 years older, and back then we were still very different. Back then we were very, very different people. I was very shy and kind of standoffish, and he was very brash, and he was the one getting high and doing all the mischievous stuff, graffiti about town. And I was I guess, the mummy's boy and not doing much. But
are you the youngest child?
I am. There's only the two of us. So I was the youngest. I was a bit more sheltered. But the one thing that kind of glued us together a little bit was this love. My love of Kung Fu was definitely more than his. But there was something that brought us together in that he always appreciated a good fight scene. So he would always find one. Let's say, if you remember, you probably remember this when Channel 4 in the UK, they used to play Jackie Chan films super late at night, even like 2 in the morning. Project A would be on. Yeah. And my brother would tape them early on. Oh, actually, it wasn't even him. It was a friend of his that would tape them off TV. And he would always find a great fight scene and call me down into the living room and be like, watch this one. And we always had a great kind of camaraderie over these fight scenes, even if we didn't have a camaraderie about anything else. And yeah, it's strange. Over the years, we've definitely distanced ourselves from each other, partly because, we're thousands of miles away. But we're just not similar in many ways. But deep down inside us, we both have a love for movies. We just don't really talk to each other about it anymore. But there was that little thing at a young age. Kung Fu definitely brought me closer to my brother. I can happily say that.
That's interesting, because I think weirdly I'm the one that did all the stupid shit. I'm the youngest too, but I'm the youngest of 3. I don't know if that changes to a slightly different dynamic, kind of having 3 siblings, because I think 2 is an interesting dynamic, and as is 1. My wife's an only child, and she had a very different experience with her parents than I did with mine. I think I was given a huge amount of rope that my brother and sister probably didn't get to share. And I think by the time that your parents have done that dance of having kids a couple of times, the youngest one's normally left to their own devices, and I certainly was. And so I got up to a whole bunch of stuff that I probably shouldn't have. A bit of a tyrant. But no, interesting stuff. Right? And I think I'm trying to think how that relates back to my my foray to the States, because we're by the time that I'd graduated uni, which was like 2001. 2001 I started, 2005 I graduated, and then I came to the States in 2007 properly. First went across in 2006, and then kind of tried to make the move in 2007, and was in the States until early 2011.
How like I obviously we don't want to get into the ins and outs of politics and moving to the US, but on what kind of visa did you go? A work visa? Okay, we won't get into that.
We totally can, because it's fine. I certainly don't think Homeland Security is going to come after me. But basically, it kind of started through an offer of work, right? Because I'd graduated and I was messing about doing short films, and I was teaching filmmaking as well at that point. Weirdly, I started teaching before I started teaching filmmaking before I went to university to learn filmmaking.
Wow,
which is a whole other story we can get into a different day, which is sort of happenstance. But basically, I'd been out of school for so long. They don't want to. That's why I couldn't get into film school the first time I applied. So they're very reluctant to let me go back into a full-time education situation when I'd left school so early and had pretty shitty qualifications. So I had to do a thing called a degree foundation course before they would let me go, where you go off and basically do a year's course for like a really shitty certificate, but it's just to
Yes.
get you back into the habit of attending classes on time and writing papers and stuff. And by the time that I did that, I'd already gone to this there's this wonderful little facilities centre, the centre of Edinburgh, that was designed for people who either didn't have the time, didn't have the money, or didn't have the qualifications to go to university, but wanted to learn, right? So they would do short courses usually over one night or 2 nights. If it was something a bit more intensive, maybe a week, but you would go every day, and it was tiered pricing structure. So if you were working full time, you paid X amount. If you were a student, you paid half that price, and if you were unemployed, you paid almost just whatever you could. Like you would just donate a couple of quid and they'd still let you come, right? So I was not a full-time student, and I was kind of sort of working at that point, but not much. So I qualified for the just give us what you can afford. So I did every single course that place had.
Wow.
And in some cases met way better teachers there than I actually ended up getting at university. There's a guy called Simon Dennis who was kind of like my first sort of filmmaking mentor. He was an incredible cinematographer. It's like the only guy I ended up going to the same degree course that he'd done, but he was spoken about like legend when I finally got there.
Wow.
He was like the only guy who'd shot an entire 16mm feature film for his final film project, got it into festivals, got picked up for distribution, basically almost like a John Carpenter Dark Star story.
Impressive.
On a small level. No one else managed to replicate that. And then he went on to be, there was some sort of like Superman spin-off series based on Krypton a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah.
I remember he was like DP on that, and he did like Who Killed Jenny Versace and a bunch of other stuff. He was like an amazing cinematographer based in the States now. He's just been indoctrinated into the ASC fairly recently, but yeah, absolute legend. So he basically taught me cinematography over the course of like 2 or 3 nights.
Wow.
Way better than my college teacher did, but I digress. But anyway, I did every single course they had. Like I did their Avid editing course, I did sound recording course, I did every single camera course I could get my hands on, thinking I would need all this shit when I went to university. Got to university and realized, oh fuck, no one here has basically spent that much time learning, because I was read everything I possibly could. So when I did my degree foundation course, the sort of video teacher there, after about maybe a month or so of me attending the class, she was like, I teach part-time at that place that you've done all these courses. And she's like, and I'm going on maternity leave. She was like, getting to be heavily pregnant at this point. And she was like, based on what I've seen in the last 2 months, you could teach the course that I teach there. Do you want to? And I was like, all right. So I started teaching, like, and because I came from like a bit of an audio background, I'd sold musical equipment for so long, so I could sort of talk the talk. She was like, don't tell anyone that you're still studying, please, but go and teach them sound recording. So I would teach people sound recording for documentaries and feature films and stuff, and show them how to set up boom mics and show them how to use, like, at that point it was like a DAT audio recorder, and sort of tell them how to kind of, and then by the time I stopped doing it, we'd progressed to like a hard drive based recording system, like a flash kind of recorder. So started doing that, then started doing filmmaking, so videography courses there. And then towards the end, I was doing the basic editing class too. And then when I graduated university, like 4 whatever years later, I got hired there as like their in-house technician. So I was kind of working there full time at that point, and still teaching. And we would do like cinema screenings once a month where we showed short films and music videos, basically whatever the fuck we wanted to program and show. And then we would DJ after. It was fucking great. Very, very happy to. Yeah, it was really good fun. It was mostly just me and the other guy who worked there playing records that we knew each other would like, to a room full of bored people. So just because it was inside a cafe, right? So you have loads of people just getting drunk, not really paying any attention, but one other dude at the other side of the room was spitting whatever we played. So anyway, happy days. So all that sort of stuff was kicking about. And when I graduated, I got found through, this is back in the days of MySpace, I think, probably. And I had a few of my short films up on MySpace, and I'd done a couple of things as just editing exercises to try and teach myself how to edit. I can remember cutting together slices of 8-diagram Pole Fighter to a Chemical Brothers song, and like that, like the fight sequence between like Gordon Liu and Philip Cole towards the end of 8-diagram Pole Fighter is pretty long. I think it's about 9 minutes long, and I had this 3-minute Chemical Brothers track. So I cut the fight sequence down, tried to still make it make sense, and cut it so that it was like Mickey Mouse. You know what I mean by like Mickey Mousing? Mickey Mousing in editing terms is like the music matches what you're seeing on screen in terms of its editing. So I'll use it for trailers all the time now, and something my university lecturers fucking hated me doing, but I was obsessed with it at that point. But Mickey Mousing in its purest sense is if a character walks up the stairs, the music goes boom, 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 boom.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I was basically trying to turn that little slice of Shaw Brothers match cuts. If people's hands would kind of meet or their feet would be on the beat. Right?
Wow.
And so it became like a really good editing exercise because it worked your timing, and it worked how you're having to like cut up quite small slices, and sometimes you'd have to like push and pull things a little bit to make it work. And Fight Club had come out at that point and done its weird fuck with as if the film had been moved around in the gate sort of effects, right? So I was pissing about with all that sort of stuff too to try and have it so you could almost see the frames moving and stuff. I've still got it somewhere. I'll send it if I can find it. I'll send you it.
I'd love to see it. I would absolutely.
It's pretty good fun. I was like screening it at sort of short film festivals and stuff, and we'd get up and speak about like basically trying to get people to do stuff. So saying if you have no money to go out and buy film equipment, you can't afford to like write your own scripts, or you don't have the time or whatever, don't let that stop you trying to learn the skills. Just pick a film you love and recut it. And it's something they used to do with film students a lot. They would make us recut the Battleship Potemkin and try and cut that movie down into 3 minutes and still have it make sense, which is nigh on fucking impossible. Battleship Potemkin. So I was doing loads and loads of that sort of stuff. And someone found me, this woman who was living in, at that point, she was living in between Los Angeles and New Jersey. And she said like she'd potentially had funding in place for a feature film, but she hadn't kind of quite worked out the details. But she was already kind of working on bits of production for short films, some kind of more commercial corporate stuff. So like you just go and shoot some video for a company. But for some reason she latched onto what I was doing and was like, you need to come across. And I was like, I can't afford to go across to the States. I have no money. Like I was still working at the CD store and stuff, but I certainly didn't have enough for transatlantic travel at that point in time. This is like 2006, 2007. It was pretty expensive. And she was like, don't worry about it. I'll send you the money to get your ticket. So she basically paid for my first ticket to go across there. So I went over, did a couple of bits of work, very quickly fell into a relationship. And so that evolved very quickly into like, I need to kind of be in America all the time. So I came back to Scotland, sold everything that I owned, with the exception of my computer for editing and I think whatever camera I was using at that point. And then moved as quickly as I possibly could to lock, stock and barrel with no visa situation, just moved on a tourist visa. And to see how long I could get away with that for. 6 years, it turns out, is how long you can get away with that for.
To me, that's incredible, because when I moved here, I was, excuse me, just to tell a very, very short story. When I came here, I came to the States for a woman, as you do. And when I first got here, I started applying for work early on. And I couldn't find a job for the life of me. And I was desperately after a work visa, essentially. That's what I was going for. And I think I was something like 6 months over my time. And I was terrified. I was like, oh, they're going to come knocking on my door. They're going to chuck me out of the country. I'm fucking done. I can't come back to America. I'm going, I was good to hear that I could have lasted 6 years.
Well, not in one continuous go. So what I would have to do is I'd have to stay for the length of my tourist visa, come back to Scotland for like a day or 2 days, and then go straight back, right? So I was still getting quite a lot of editing work from the UK, thankfully. And I could do that anywhere because it was like the internet was kind of good enough that people could upload onto some sort of online storage place. I could go and download the clips, edit it, re-upload what I'd done for them, right? So I was able to get bits and pieces of work, and it also gave me an actually legally justifiable paper trail of like, this is how I'm making money, and it's not in the US. But I don't need to be in the US to do my work that I'm being paid for in the UK. Great. So the conversation definitely got harder and harder as each year advanced. But I would stay in the States for 3 months. I think occasionally there was, at some point, they extended it for a while. So there was a while and they were doing 6 month tourist visas somewhere in the middle of it. So I was really lucky I'd get to stay for 6 months. Otherwise, normally it was 3. So I'd rent a place, stay for 3 months, move out of that place, lock, stock, put all my stuff into a storage unit, come back to Scotland for like a day or 2 days, get on a plane and come straight back again, right? And most of the time in Los Angeles, a little bit of time in New Jersey, and then occasionally to Vegas or Palm Springs for
Wow.
kind of certain periods. Wasn't in Vegas for very long. Fucking hated Vegas. No offense to all you Vegas viewers, not my place. Not my place at all. I found, but the thing that made it really obnoxious for me was all the fucking British people. It was not the native Las Vegians, right? It was just all really drunk, awful, atrocious English people more than anything else. I was like, this is just fucking hell on earth. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So yeah, bounced back and forth for like 6 years, and the visa thing was difficult because at that point it was heavily oversubscribed. It was like was it a 2-1B working visa? Was it still a 2-1B? Can't remember if that's even the right code.
No anymore. It's been a while for me.
There was a sort of standard, fairly generic catch-all working visa.
Mm-hmm.
You had to have a sponsor, so you had to have an employer saying, we want to hire this person, and that was the one you go for. I think there was a 3-year waiting list before they would even look at the application at that point. And the main thing that was going to basically help me with my visa application was the feature film. Finally got funding for the feature film through my partner at the time. So she had not a huge amount of money in place, but it was enough that I would have been able to get enough credits to basically get into the union, because it was a kind of a unionized shoot. It was going to be a unionized shoot. Ended up that feature film ended up not actually happening, but it wasn't through my non-involvement of it. But for a good chunk of time, they were kind of trying to keep the window open for me to do it.
Yeah.
And so we went to a lawyer, a really shit lawyer in retrospect, very shady, who said, like, don't even worry about it. Like, none of this is a problem, right? He's like, the problem is you're trying to come at this the way that everyone's coming at this, and you're trying to apply for the main work visa. I'm like, isn't that the work visa that you should apply for? And he was like, no. You need to apply for this other separate classification of visa that's super undersubscribed. There's loads of these available. They're giving them out all day, every day. And it was a call. I'll never forget the title. And it sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud now. It should have done at the time, but he was very convincing. But it's called for persons of extraordinary ability, right?
Got you. Yes.
And so this is the type of visa that gets given to, I think, probably musicians, sports stars, and occasionally people working in the movie business. But it turned out very rarely for people working in the movie business, actually. So he convinced me to put in the application for this. So I got all my support documents together. I'd saved up a chunk of cash, thought I'd be fine for the application because it wasn't insanely expensive, but it was a chunk, right? Mm-hmm. And sent off all the stuff to Homeland Security. And they came back, basically, didn't say yes, they didn't say no. They just said, we need more information. We need more support information, and a check for, it was either $350 or $500. Can't remember which. I think it was $350. Mm-hmm. And I dutifully got the extra information together and got letters from back home and kind of got like loads and loads of extra references and stuff, and dutifully sent this all back. And they did the same exact thing again. Said, we need more information. Give us another check for $350. They did that 9 times in a row until I had no checks for $350 left. 9 times in a row in a really short period. And it would have been okay if they'd just given it all in one list at one point. Yes. But it seemed to be constantly changing and evolving, right? Yeah. In a way where I've kind of about halfway through, I was like, is just this a grift to make money off idiots like me? So in the end, I had to hire an incredibly good lawyer who was super expensive, but took pity on me, I think, because he realized I'd been fucked over, and he would bill me by the minute, which was pretty unbelievable. So he'd speak to me for it was like $300 an hour or something, but he would speak to me for 7 minutes and just bill me for 7 minutes. Nice. I very much appreciate him. Yes. I think he didn't need to do it. He was just took pity on me, and he helped extricate me from this situation.
Okay.
And which he did manage to do, because if I'd just left, I would have never been allowed back in. If I'd left in the middle of an open visa application, I would have been fucking done. I would have basically been blacklisted for coming back to the States. Right. So he managed to kind of basically pick apart the application and get me out of it and get that application loop closed. And then I came back to Scotland totally penniless with no stuff. Had to leave most of my possessions in the States. I couldn't afford to ship my computer and my camera and all that stuff back.
Wow.
But again, that's a whole other story. But the thing that kind of really brought it to a head is my partner at the time went into his office for the last meeting when he was basically just about to close the loop on it. And he said, just to let you know what you're up against, I have 3 people going through this same fight just now that I'm looking after. You're one of the 3. The other 2 guys are both also trying to get the same visa. And he's like, and I think they probably maybe have a chance. Mm-hmm. You have no chance. Right. But these other 2 guys might have a chance. But just to put this in context, check out, I'll show you their support material. And the first guy had a typed letter from James Cameron
Oh, fucking hell. All right, you're done. You're never going to match that.
Because he was one of the first guys working out the nuts and bolts for what would end up becoming James Cameron's motion capture system for the first Avatar movie.
Okay,
and he was one of the tech brains that was devising that. And Homeland Security were like, don't know. They were still on the fence about that cat, even though he had this letter from it. And the second dude had a fucking handwritten letter from Steven Spielberg saying, this person's the best in their field on the planet. I need him for my production. And that dude, Homeland Security, were like, don't know. When you're living in Los Angeles, you could throw a stone, you'll hit a filmmaker. Yeah. Nobody is arguably of extraordinary ability in that city, in that industry.
Wow.
Right? So I had no fucking chance.
So, no.
Yeah. So anyway, that cut a long story short, I ended up back in Scotland with no money, no nice collection of anything. Everything had been sold or left behind, and then I had to sort of start back building things up again from ground zero.
So this entire time, across your time in America and then moving back, were you still, just to bring it back, were you still the Asian cinema guy the entire time? Like,
not so much. Not over there. Not so much over there. I was kind of like just consuming whatever movies we could see, and I had very little money, very little disposable income there. So I would occasionally like buy stuff from was it West Coast? There was one particular video shop I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Suncoast.
Oh, Suncoast. Yeah, Suncoast Radio. Sorry, yes.
I would go to Suncoast and buy like cheap DVDs or kind of stuff from my apartment there. And I had like a shady grift. My apologies to all your American viewers for my. This is very disrespectful, but the American returns policy is the best on the planet, right? So every 3 months, I would basically have to outfit a new apartment with stuff. So I would go and buy a TV, a DVD player, an air conditioner unit, a fridge, whatever. And then at the end of the 3 months, I would just take it all back.
Take it all back, yeah.
Get refunds. And then the next time I came over again, I would do the same. So I had a box of DVDs that was a fairly okay size of kind of essentials, and that would move from place to place. But the other accoutrements would all get reset. So there wasn't that many opportunities. Like, I wish the New Beverly was up and running in the way that it would be a couple of years after I left.
Yeah.
Because they weren't doing the screenings of the sort of things that they would go on to do when I was there.
Right.
Or if they were, I wasn't getting a chance to see them. I was too busy hustling and eating hot dogs out of brown paper bags that I did in the microwave for the cheapest possible meal imaginable.
I get it. I was the same way when I came. To an extent, my story does not match yours whatsoever, but I understand the idea of like your love of certain things kind of falling off when you move to a new country. When I came here, I still had a love for Kung Fu cinema, and technically I was in the mecca of Kung Fu cinema in a way, because America had so many more releases. But I was without a job for a while, and I was scraping to make ends meet, and it was tough. And I was my first. I don't know if you're aware of this. My first job when I moved to this country, I was very lucky.
It was Playboy, wasn't it?
It was Playboy, yeah. So I got a job with Playboy, and they didn't pay too badly. So I was quite lucky to get a job with them, but they do not sponsor people. So they in order to stay in the country, I did actually have to get married. So I got married to my first wife, which anyone watching, that did not work out well. But so be it. It's part of the story. But I was happy. I got that job, and then I was able to kind of get paid, back then mildly well. And then I had to start again. Obviously I never returned to the UK, but I had to start the whole collection again, because I brought nothing over with me. I brought like a CD wallet where I'd left all the cases at home, and I brought my DVDs, some of my DVDs over. And even then I didn't bring many of my Kung Fu releases, because a lot of them were on VHS. So I had to start the whole Kung Fu movie thing again. And I mean, that's the way it went. And I was lucky in that working for Playboy, they were in the department I was in, everyone was just a massive cinema fan. Just a huge, no Asian cinema, but everyone was just a massive fan of films. And I was very, very lucky to just be a part of that department. And everyone else should thank me, by the way, because, and this is an absolute fact, I can swear down by this fact, I can promise you this is absolutely true. Remember when, I'm speaking to everyone here, remember when Kim Kardashian did Playboy and she did a Playboy shoot? I was the first person, I would guess, in the world to steal that photo shoot and put it online. I was one of the first people with access to it, and I stole every single picture and I put it on multiple message boards across the internet, and it spread like wildfire. So you have me to thank for maybe the first time you saw that photo shoot.
It's admirable work.
That's my claim to fame. That's literally the only claim to fame I have.
No, I think there's a few other ones.
Oh, maybe.
Oh, I do. No, it's so weird. I mean, I think I'm props to you for making it work, because it's very difficult to kind of relocate and move to a different country and actually function.
Unbelievable. I had so many bumps along the way, and I struggled, and I went through a lot of mental health issues, and yeah, it's been a pretty tough journey along the way. But just to bring it back, funny enough, I always had movies to lean on. Like it sounds kind of silly to say like, oh, movies were like my one thing that I could always rely on, but that's the truth. I was always a big fan, and yeah, I started again when I came up here, started picking up titles again, and they were kind of the same old titles I'd had on VHS, but I started picking up on DVD, and then yeah, it kind of went from there, and yeah, fast forward, and here I am still doing it.
In some ways, though, it's kind of, there's a blessing to have gone through having a collection before, because it gives you you don't sweat not having to pick up every single title. You can kind of curate it a little bit more by the fact that you've gone through a bunch of duds and you're like, yeah, probably don't need to have that again. Which is a nice place to be, because some people are coming to this for the first time now, and we're also in this weird, they're constantly saying that physical media is kind of dying, which on some levels maybe it is, right? But I like to think of it as being, if it's the course of the day and the sun's starting to set on it, we're in magic hour, right? We're in that beautiful golden glow that you get at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Where there's an embarrassment of riches just now of stuff kind of coming out, and the Blu-ray format's been quite incredible for kind of like starting again. So when I started again, I started on Blu-ray when I was starting to kind of collect again.
Okay.
And kind of building stuff back up again. And weirdly, I've gone through like an inverted version of my awful experience of trying to move to the States. Has kind of given me a little bit more understanding and insight to be able to help my wife, because she's done the other route where she's moved to the UK from a different country. So my wife's from Canton province. Okay. And she studied at the same university that I did, not at the same time, but kind of we met when she was studying in Scotland, started a relationship. She then had to go back to China after she finished her studies. We did the long distance relationship thing for a while. We'd go across and visit her there, or we'd arrange to meet at a specific place. Like we would kind of both meet in Thailand, and we'd have sort of time together there, and I would have to come back to Scotland, she would come back there. And then 2019 we got married in Hong Kong, so like from just not long after that point, she was able to kind of come back here, and we're still in what we're in now, 2024, we're still doing the dance with her visa just now, so we're still not through the end of that cycle. Very expensive. So like the UK government is in some ways much more expensive and unforgiving and awful compared to the American government, and the American system is no joke. The British system's a fucking nightmare, and even harder post-Brexit. So even though we are married and have been married for a number of years, we still have to pay them about $2,000 to $3,000 every 2.5 years. And we'll have to do so another, I think, 1 or 2 times until she can finally get a British passport. It's like, all in all, it's about $15,000 grift for the UK government.
Jeez, it's horrible. And people think moving to the UK is easy.
No.
No, a lot of people claim that, just like, you can just move to the UK. It's much. I used to think that when I was speaking to my current wife, Devon. We had early on a conversation where we were just like, well, are we attempting to move back to the UK? And I was like, oh, it'd be super easy. You could just walk through and just get in. You get a... No, that's not the case. I've been illuminated to that. Yeah. And
I think maybe it was a little bit easier when, depending on where you were coming from, like when pre-Brexit, if you were certainly coming from one of the other European countries, then it kind of was pretty easy at that point. Yeah. And vice versa. We had all of Europe open to us if we wanted to go and work there with pretty much without any issues, and that's all totally changed for benefits that I can't quite work out. But I don't want to get into UK politics.
To be honest, I think we've talked more about visas than we have about
movies. That's probably very true. let's bring it back on track. One of the reasons, like, if I will bring it back full circle. So, like, the day after I got married in Hong Kong,
Yes.
my wonderful wife took me on a pilgrimage to the Shaw Brothers studio. So, like, literally,
Oh my God.
I think the day before we got married, we went to see the Bruce Lee exhibit at the kind of one of the, I think it's, I can't remember the name of the center it's on at in Hong Kong, but still there, kind of one of the arts museums. And the day after, we went out to Clearwater Bay.
Wow.
Just to see how far we could get. So got to the gates, and that was kind of as close to the studio as we could get. They certainly weren't going to let us in. But if you walk around the corner from the building, you come to what was the old accommodation block,
right.
Where a lot of the actors and directors and producers lived when they were working at Shaw Brothers. And that is easily accessible. You can just walk into it. And the wheelie bins outside all got Shaw Brothers logos, branding, which is pretty cool. And there's still some people living in some of the properties, and if it had more courage, I maybe would have knocked on the door and basically been like, what movies you worked on, right? But we didn't have that sort of time. And I also felt a bit bad, for this is the day after my wife had got married, and I was dragging her off to the Shaw Brothers studio, but he was very happy to kind of take me. It was a kind of a good fun day. But so it's that side of things has opened up to me much more by being able to kind of visit there.
Yeah.
And we go back as often as we kind of can do. Our family is obviously still in Canton province, and we've got quite a lot of friends in Hong Kong. And by doing the channel, sort of started in kind of lockdown time, by the time that we've been back more recently, it meant I've been able to kind of meet channel people when I've gone over. So like last time we were able to see like Big Mike and Arnav Venema and stuff, see them and kind of meet up and kind of go out and eat ice cream and cakes and stuff and just chat movies and stuff, which is super cool, right? And so I think it's really nice now I'm getting to celebrate that love of kind of Asian cinema through my wife and through going over there. And so watching movies for her isn't watching Asian movies, it's just watching movies. And so there's a lot of them that I've seen that she never had, because of she hadn't seen that many Shaw Brothers movies growing up. So I think a lot of the Shaw's movies, and vice versa, there's a bunch of movies that she's seen, particularly sort of Leslie Cheung's movies that weren't heroic bloodshed or action movies. She's seen a lot more of the kind of comedies and the romances and some of the more obscure Stephen Chow stuff. She's seen a lot of Stephen Chow movies that I haven't seen. So we can kind of sort of fill in the holes in each other's knowledge. But she likes movies a whole lot. So we, if we're going out to the cinema, 9 times out of 10, we're going out to see an Asian movie on the rare occasions when it screens in the UK. So that's kind of cool. So we kind of, and she can help me in ways that I never had access to someone before, being like, that's what that sign means. That joke's like this because of that, right? So I didn't have access to that before. So it's been pretty cool in my more advanced
incredible. Years. That's such a, it sounds terrible calling it this, but I'm calling it a bonus. But it is such a bonus to have someone. That's why I've always appreciated Frank Zhang's commentaries, because you watch a movie like, and I haven't watched a commentary on this, but I'm just throwing out a title which I imagine he probably explains quite well. Something like Miracle Fighters. But it's so crazy and there's so much going on. I imagine he explains it quite well, and he's done that on so many titles where it's just like, oh, this is what this joke means, because it's all in the meaning, that doesn't translate. I think that's one, and like you said, brings it back to what you said. We're at the perfect time right now, where we're at that golden hour where not only are we getting these incredible, Blu-ray right now, we're getting incredible releases for all sorts. I mean, you can get, whether it's Ryan Gosling's Drive, or whether it's a Shaw Brothers film, whatever. But the fact that we're getting not only the movies, but getting all these commentary, special features, all this stuff kind of built into them is just, and not to mention the shiny packaging that we all love. But it's just a special time. I think just having these people, and like you say, it's the fact that you've been able to go to Hong Kong and meet Big Mike and Arnav Venema. And I'm always quite ashamed because I'm in the US, and technically, I'm close to many of the martial arts, Asian cinema people. Not too close, but they're easily accessible, and yet I haven't met any of them yet.
Oh, you met a couple. I'm a big fan of the girl who does the AJ Kicks Instagram. She's awesome, and you've hung out with those guys, haven't you?
Yes, Article Dropouts I will love forever. They basically helped me set up my channel. They are amazing people, and yes, I have been very lucky to meet them.
They're super cool. My prediction is that they're like, I think they've got it in them to be the kind of next Martial Club push through, right? Because the Martial Club guys have done so well at like making that transition from being basically YouTubers and IGers into making big movies, right? And everything about what the art school dropouts are doing, I suspect, will take them eventually on that same path. I certainly hope so.
Yes, they have. Well, they've just been working on the latest Michael Jai White film.
There you go. Okay.
They've
Cool.
been working on the fight choreography for the latest Michael Jai White film.
Yeah.
That's, I believe, it's called Trouble Man, which is out, I assume, by the end of the year. But yes, I mean, they can. I love them to bits. I could talk about them for hours. They're just wonderful people, and I hopefully, fingers crossed, if everything goes well, I'll be seeing them again in November. I'm going to the Urban Action Showcase in New York in November, and if all things go according to plan, I should hopefully meet at least a handful of other people within the community. A lot of them are based in New York, so I would love to be able to meet Shogun Supreme, Times Square Kung Fu.
Yeah.
So,
Frankie's a legend. I really like Frankie.
Unbelievable. That guy.
Have you had him on this yet? Have you had him on
I
your channel?
haven't, but he's on my list of guests to have on. That guy's commitment and just work ethic and just knowledge is incredible.
Frankie's amazing. He's been helping me out a lot recently because I'd had a Twitter account for years, but I've been so bad at doing anything with it. And he's really been actually helping me be a bit more kind of focused with how I kind of. He's been my Twitter kung fu tutor basically. He's like given up so much of his time, right, to kind of like go through things with me because I was asking total idiot questions, like because I'm not that tech savvy when it comes to that type of thing, like and how algorithms on websites and stuff work. And he's been amazing.
Yeah, I refuse to kind of. I'm lucky in that I refuse to kowtow to the Twitter algorithms. I just go on there and just post my stupid movie opinions, and that's about it. Instagram, I'm more kind of dialed in a little bit, and I really want to. I don't want to call them my fan base, but I'll just call them my followers. I want to feed my followers. I want them to have these great clips, these great images that I find. But Twitter, I'm just like, I'll just post any old shite on there. I should be better, but that's all. I guess that's behind the scenes stuff that I should be more aware of. But it's a great time. It's a great time for movies. It's a great time within the community. Just the people within the community right now are just incredible, so helpful. If anyone out there, I'm just going to throw this out there. If anyone out there is thinking on starting an Asian cinema channel, Instagram, whatever you want to call it, whatever website, whatever you want to do, just tap into the community and you will find that there is a host of wonderful people just waiting to help you. It's incredible. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Even up to the people who are working on the labels. I mean, kind of like what Will knows. Will's definitely been on your channel before, and Will's Facebook group totally populated by a whole bunch of people who are working on these releases. Yeah. There's also, I think you and I are both, not that many people in the rest of our little group that we speak to are, but you and I are both regular visitors to the Kung Fu fandom forums.
We are
which
indeed.
Is a super cool kind of place. A very refreshingly non-toxic forum, which if anyone's had familiar with like the blu-ray.com forums, which can descend into like overly tech kind of madness and gets quite unpleasant and quite toxic. KFF's not like that at all.
Not at all.
For the most part, a really pretty chill place. And again, loads of people who work on the releases also in there too. Kung Fu Bob is a moderator on the site and a very wonderful moderator he is too. And see, I get loads of information from that place. And even if there's stuff that I'm not too sure about, occasionally I'll pitch out a question. It's a very helpful, really good place.
That's kind of I don't know what to call it, like a secret treasure trove, KFF, because it's just, you can always find an answer to any question that you might have on there. And, oftentimes it's a case of you'll find out what, Eureka's next release is about an hour before Eureka releases it. So you always get to, kind of leap at it and then post it on or I should say my channel or whatever I'm working on. So it's been a wonder. I think I've been there for 17 years on that.
Wow. Okay. I've dipped in and out on that board a couple of times. I totally couldn't remember my first login. So I think I've had an account for a few years, but I did have one going back a little bit longer, but back to when it was more 36 cinema.
Yes.
36 styles.
No, originally it was, oh my god, it's 36 style. I mean, it's dialed in or in tune with 36 styles now. It used to be, oh my god, why can't I remember the name? Oh, it's
Because it used to
gone.
be same, but it used to be a slightly different format, and there was a really good image archive on it, which kind of
Yes.
got lost in the transition. Because it used to be so good for covers of like, if you had a Shaw Brothers movie you didn't have the cover for, they would have like the cover art and stuff.
Yes.
Right? It had a pretty incredible kind of like picture resource archives. I can't remember what it was called either, but yeah, like really good for them.
Yeah, it's truly wonderful, the community. And just speaking, not necessarily focusing on the community, but speaking of like Blu-rays and collections and kind of picking up all these releases, I have to kind of applaud you. I think you have one of the most magical collections I've seen out of anyone, because you have the ability to pick up releases that I would, quite frankly, I would never have been able to even set my eyes on had it not been for your channel. And you have, you have.
I sell a lot. The space that you see behind me, there's basically 2 tall bookcases and there's 2 small bookcases. That is all the space I have, and I've kind of like made a deal. My wife would never kind of impose this sort of restriction on me. I've imposed this restriction on myself because I don't want it to get out of hand, and I also don't have completely deep pockets. But the space that I have, when I can fill it, great. So if I want to bring something into it, I have to generally sell something out of it. So what probably a lot of people don't appreciate, because I don't make a video on. I'll make a video on new pickups periodically, but I never make a video on this is what I've sold this month, right? And I maybe should, because I do occasionally get messages from people being like, how on earth can you afford all this stuff, right? I sell almost as much as I buy, so it keeps it at a sort of constant level. And I do pick up some ridiculous stuff, like I'll pick up some stuff that has no English subtitles on it. And then I'll swap out discs and things. I do stupid stuff, or I'll buy things just for the packaging sometimes. But
don't we all do that?
Sometimes, but I maybe have taken that to an extreme that I sometimes don't like. This just arrived, right? A case in point. So we were in France earlier this year. We're in Paris, and there's an incredible retailer in Paris called FNAC. I don't know if they've got any branches in the States, right? But FNAC kind of do like a mix of books. It's kind of like almost like Waterstones, if Waterstones had a really kick-ass kind of Blu-ray section, right? And they do a lot of their own sort of exclusive releases, or they do kind of a lot of just interesting shit, and a massive Asian section. It's crazy walking around there and seeing how many covers Tony Stella has done for French releases. And you're like, oh my god, right?
That guy's
so cool. But I saw this when we were there, right, which was like an amazing 4K release of The Host, right, the Bong Joon-ho movie. By a pretty small label that I wasn't familiar with until I saw this box, called The Jokers, French label, right? And they've done quite a lot of Korean cinema. It's mostly Korean movies that they put out. They've done some movies from other parts of the world, but they seem to have a particular taste for Korean cinema, which I do too. So I'd spotted this release then, but kicked myself for not buying it when we were in Paris, but then got a really good deal through French Amazon. But this had no English subs on it at all, but it's just a really very nice, beautiful, crazy size. It's like different size to everything else around. But yeah, I like kind of picking up things like that, mostly just for the I don't know, the packaging love, and the fact that I think the booklet's dual language and the special feature disc is dual language, and then I'll just put in my own movie disc, right? So that kind of, you just got to Frankenstein it together into a set that works.
Can I just say, I have always admired that about you, and about how you are. I don't know what the term is actually. I guess non-pretentious about. You will get this beautiful packaging, which is stunning, and you are comfortable with putting different discs into that packaging. Unlike some people that are so almost OCD about, oh no, I can't do that. I will have this German release with nothing but German subtitles. It's got no English on it, but I can't possibly swap out a disc for it. I have to keep it as it is. I'm a bit like that myself, but I won't ever pick up a non-English friendly release. I've never done that.
I fell down this weird rabbit hole a couple of years ago, and it happened in a way that I didn't necessarily expect it to happen, right? And it happened through, and I'm going to name a name that's going to maybe piss some people off, and I apologize in advance, right? But it happened because of Jacob from Hong Kong Rescue. And I, like many people, had a fucking nightmare trying to get releases from Jacob, right?
Yep.
I sort of did, like, though half my discs didn't work, and I was lucky that he sent I did actually manage to get replacement discs out from him, but it took a lot of threatenings. It took a lot of like PayPal interactions, and it was just deeply unpleasant. But I ended up with his versions of Hard Boiled, The Killer, and Police Story 3.
Police Story 3, yeah.
And they were sitting on my shelf, and every time I looked at them, I got really bummed out. I was like, that was 3 months of fucking absolute hell. And it was on every forum, everyone was kind of basically having a hard time and getting really pissed off with it. And so I basically was like, I kind of don't want to have them on my shelf, but I kind of do want to have them on my shelf, if that makes sense. So I'm going to make my own covers for them, was my initial thought, right? And so I was doing a little search for something quite randomly and stumbled onto this weird subset of the internet that's obsessed with making fake Criterion covers. There's a lot of people who do it, right? There's one guy in particular who's a fucking master called Pineapples 101.
Okay.
And what he does is go back to releases that Criterion put out on Laserdisc and make a Blu-ray cover for it.
All right, awesome.
So if people have the Criterion Laserdisc and they want a box that represents that on their shelf, then they can basically have a Blu-ray size box. And he's a fucking master at it. So if you download one of his PDFs, it's got every single box size variant. So he'll give you like a Criterion box, he'll give you a regular Blu-ray case, he'll give you a DVD box, he'll give you books from the inside. I'm not that sophisticated, but he had, if I can jump off for 2 seconds. Because Criterion many years ago put out Hard Boiled and The Killer on DVD, he'd made his own covers for Hard Boiled and The Killer, right? Wonderful. Right down to making little booklets for them too, which is pretty slick. Like with, you transpose all the notes, right? I'm not that slick. So that started me off, though. I basically put my Hong Kong Rescue versions into these boxes and was much happier looking at them on the shelf when they were, to me, now like full Criterions, right? What I didn't necessarily expect was that would snowball into this thing where if I got a box that I was uncomfortable having on the shelf because I had nothing else from that label, or it was like a weird random one-off, didn't like the cover art for it, or whatever reason, I'd just start making fake Criterion covers from them. So probably a good 2/3 of my long Criterion shelf here are not Criterion titles.
Right.
There are things that I've made my own cover for, so I can put them in. And now it's become kind of something that gives me mirth. So now I'm like, I look at Criterion's release schedule, and there's a lot of very pretentious, quite like, oh, guys, okay, I get why you think you need to put that out, but really, like they made a big deal about the Triangle of Sadness coming out. I fucking hated that movie so much. I thought it was so ridiculously pretend. Please don't watch it. It'll just make you sad and annoyed, right? Because it was just so. And the people who were singing its praises, great if you enjoyed it that much. It just to me felt like I've always got a bit of an issue of somebody who has very little experience of anybody who's working class making something that supposedly champions the working classes.
Yes.
And there's quite a lot of it in that movie, which it rubbed me up really the wrong way, right? Anyway, I digress. The Criterion are putting out stuff like that, whereas I will put stuff that there's no way in hell that Criterion would ever deign themselves to put onto Blu-ray, some of the stuff that I've made a Criterion cover for. And now it just makes me happy. It's like if I've got some spare time, I'll be like, I think I'm going to make like Scott Adkins' Avengement a part of my Criterion collection, right? So I'll make a cover for Avengement, which I absolutely love. And in my world, that absolutely would be deserving of pride of place on Criterion's collection, but they're never going to turn their attention to it. So I've done that. I've done a host of Korean movies that they probably wouldn't put out. There's been some great Korean series on Disney Plus, of all things. Like Disney Plus, the Korean version of Disney Plus is incredible. Like they commission some amazing shows, right? Often based on webtoons. So they did like a Shop for Killers recently, phenomenal series, right? They did Moving, another one based on a kind of like webtoon.
Do you know what? I started Moving last week, and I started at the wrong time. It was the wrong time in the day. I wasn't ready for it, so I started it. I've just put it on my queue. I didn't even get through the first episode, not for not liking it. It just wasn't the right time of the day, and I've just put it on my queue. And I'm just like, I've heard good things. I really want to watch it, so I'm gonna
keep on going with it. Like you can forgive it in a couple of places. It has some slightly ropey visual effects. They didn't have a huge budget, but the acting in that show is phenomenal, and the cast in that show is absolutely phenomenal.
I can't wait.
Absolutely amazing. Really, really enjoyed it. If you liked Moving, you will love a shop for killers, because it's more up your street narratively. Like, it's not superhero based in the same sort of way. It's about this young girl who has been raised by her uncle, and then her uncle very unexpectedly passes away, right? And she finds out quite quickly that she's basically inherited this business that she had no idea he was running. But apparently he was running a shop that supplied mercenaries and killers with anything they could possibly want to buy. And has left her an enormous amount of money. He's built a safe house around her, and so the house that she thought was just a regular house that she grew up in turns out to basically be a fortress. And as soon as he dies, it's open season on everybody coming to basically try and steal what he has. Right? And she then has to try and basically defend herself against a wave after wave of mercenaries, hitmen, kind of some using martial arts, some using super high tech like drones and those little creepy robot dogs.
Wow, that sounds incredible.
It's so cool. It's a really short series. It's only like, I think it's maybe 10 or 12 episodes at most, but
yeah,
amazing, and like jumps around, so it kind of tells you a lot of its story in flashback, which can sometimes annoy me, but here it totally works, because every time that you're at a point of disbelief with some of her abilities, because she's a pretty young kid, right?
Yeah.
They've cut back to some random lesson that her uncle had basically made sure that she got, like kind of forced her into getting like Thai boxing lessons from like this guy that runs a restaurant just for reasons. And it turns out you kind of find out exactly why, really, like he'd been sort of coaxing into it. It's so cool, man.
I'll have to find what that's streaming on over here. I'm sure it's
I think it went out on Disney Plus. Or possibly Hulu, because they do some of the stuff.
Yeah, it'll be Hulu. Disney Plus is shite here. It's just Star Wars and Marvel. That's it. So
Okay.
it'll be Hulu over here.
I made a cover for that. So that is up here in my full Criterion section. So yeah, that's become like my thing now. If I get a random disc I don't know what to do with, I love it. So half my collection probably worthless to anyone outside of me, right?
But you get such joy from it, and I think that's something that so many of us. And I'll be honest, I'll talk from my own personal experience. Sometimes I don't know, I guess the term is like misplace the joy of collecting, if we want to call it collecting. I mean, I don't want to say like I am a physical media lover. I don't like saying I'm a physical media collector, because I like saying I'm a movie fan, and that's why I get movies. I don't buy movies just to have them, right? Occasionally I do. That's another story. But I think sometimes I misplace the joy in it because I'm too busy thinking about I have to get this particular release. And for example, I'm itching to watch Perfect Days. I haven't seen the film Perfect Days yet.
Okay.
And a Mubi over here, I think that's how you pronounce it. Mubi recently put out a Blu-ray of it. And I was like, okay, I should pick that up. And then, of course, Criterion announced it. And I was just like, well, now I can't get the movie one because I have to get the Criterion one. So I kind of misplaced my joy, because why not just pick up a film just to love it? And like the things you do with your collection, like you modify it or just do things that bring you, like you say, mirth. I think there's something wonderful about that. And I think so many people have lost that to a degree. And we're focused on, like, I've seen people online, not to name names, I probably couldn't name names off the top of my head, but you can just go on YouTube and you can see people that buy 100 Blu-rays a month, and they just sit in this watch pile, and they're shiny and they're pretty and they're beautiful and nice to look at, but they never get around to watching them, or their watch list just increases. But
there's people who are buying stuff never opening it.
Exactly. That's
see that a lot at the higher end of the boutique labels. Yeah.
I don't know. That's just missing the point to me. I mean, I get it. I get what they want to do. They're collectors in that they're physical media collectors, like one would collect art, granted. But to me, I think I'm all about watching the movies. I'll be honest, I love German media books. I'm a media book sucker. They're in German. They're not in English. I mean, the movies have English subtitles, but the booklet itself, all in German. The art is in German, etc., etc. But there's something about getting my hands on a German media book that I just absolutely love. Is that going to be absolutely pointless in like, for example, I just picked up oh God, what is it? Queens with Moon Lee in it. Queen's Ransom. Is it Queen's Ransom?
Queen's Ransom's the Jimmy Wang new one. Have you got
No.
like, is it Angel Enforcers or?
I picked up Angel. Okay, that's a perfect one to talk about. Angel Enforcers. I picked up that recently, and I guarantee that next year, Eureka announces pointing that out. I'm pretty sure someone is going to put out a massive slate of Girls with Guns in the future.
Oh, probably, but that's a chunk of time away, and you get to enjoy it now. Like
exactly.
I love Kung Fu Bob. I like Bruceploitation movies. I loved having and owning the wonderful Vengeance Pack release of Enter the Game of Death, which is one of my favorite Bruceploitation movies.
Yes.
I fucking love it. Took me a while to track down the version with the Kung Fu Bob cover art.
Yeah.
So there was a sort of joy of the hunt for me for a little while. It's on that the Game of Clones box set, right?
Yes.
So from my point of view now, that is something that I don't really need. So I would like to sell it. Jason, our mutual friend Jason, he is a little bit more where he doesn't mind having multiple copies of the same movie. I try not to do that too much. So that'll just end up going to Jason. It'll make him happy. And that makes me happy. So it's like, it's cool, right? And so I think, other versions of things will come out in time. I've got a little bit of a foot in both, a little bit of a one toe in both sides, right? Because I had a shady Chinese rip of the French 4K release of Heroic Trio and Executioners. And that was fine. And then Criterion brought out their version. So I got the Criterion version, and I shifted my shady French kind of weird version that was oddly on a silver disc, right? It had gone through some processing plant somewhere, but someone had just added the subs to it. So I punted that on to somebody else. So I got the Criterion version. So I get it. And I think I describe it, and my wife will sort of tease me for it because it's become something that we kind of both lean into now. I call this just my bonsai or my garden. And I'll trim it at certain times.
You cultivate it, right?
It completely, right? So it gives me happiness moving around to different places. Sometimes I'll rearrange it and fuck with it, and I know that it's never going to get beyond the size that it is because this is the only space in our house that I kind of want to keep it in. I don't really want to get any bigger than this, and that's enough for me. Like it's enough where I know that I've seen every movie here. I've got a very small watch list of stuff that I haven't seen. It's maybe like 10 or 12 things that I've gotten over the last maybe 2 months. And half of those are films that I've already seen. I just haven't watched that specific version yet, right? And so it keeps it at a level that I'm comfortable with. And it never means that I'm having to deprive us of other things in our normal life, right?
I love that, and I'm slowly getting to that level. You probably can't see very well. My microphone's in the way. Let me just move that. So I have like a shelf over there, and then I have another one of those shelves kind of just to my right here, and they are what I call my mostly Kung Fu cinema shelving. And they're big, they're big enough. They fit enough stuff on them. But I'm trying currently not to go outside of them in terms. I got massive shelving in the other room, but that's for my mainstream Hollywood, whatever you want to call them. And I'll throw my copies of Old Boy in there and things like that. They don't live in here, but these are strictly my Kung Fu cinema, and I'm trying to keep them limited because for the first time, I think in my life, or not in my life, but first time in a long time, I am finally a perfect movie to talk about is actually Queen's Ransom, in that I didn't pick it up. And for a long time ago, I would have picked up everything Eureka put out, everything. And for the first time ever, I'm slowly now going, well, do I need that? Do I need that particular obscure Angela Mao film? It's like, maybe I don't. And that for the first time, I'm feeling much better about collecting because I'm not just shelling out dollar after dollar or tens or even hundreds of dollars on just random releases that sometimes I even watch and I'm just like, oh, I'd never seen this before. It was a blind buy and it wasn't really worth the purchase. So, and I'm also with you that I love giving away films. If I have copies of things that I just didn't enjoy and I know someone else will. I know we mentioned Jason earlier. If anyone doesn't know Jason, he's actually Martial Arts Theatre 3000 on here. So please check out his channel. Wonderful guy. Massive, massive, massive lover of Bruceploitation.
Yeah, he's the guy that got me into them, in all honesty. So I hadn't seen that many since I was a kid. And it was him that turned me onto the Clones cast.
Yeah,
and he was like, the thing that I love about him is he's like, he follows through in the most gentle, sweet, but actually really persistent way. So I don't think he just told me to listen to the Clones cast once. It was like told me probably 5 times, then would send me links to specific episodes, then we'd clip sections from specific episodes. So he did everything in his conceivable power, short of like holding me at gunpoint to listen to an episode. And once I did start, I was like, man, this is fucking awesome. So then I went through all the episodes. But yeah, he's an evangelist for Bruceploitation movies.
Wonderful guy. He actually helped me. He's the one that pointed me in the direction of me being shadow banned on Instagram.
Instagram, he helped you get out of it.
Yeah, Instagram did not care for some of the clips I put online. They were being a bit strange about sword fights for some reason. They didn't like sword or blade-based violence for some reason. So they blocked a whole bunch of my videos, and he brought it to my attention. He'd been shadow banned himself, and he mentioned it to me, and I went and looked, and I was like, oh shit, how long have I been shadow banned for? Because they don't tell you. Instagram don't tell you. They just do it. And I was like, oh shit, this is crazy. So we kind of held each other's hand and kind of hugged each other through it and worked out how to do it. And unfortunately, he actually solved his problem a lot quicker than I did. Instagram would not accept my appeals for some reason. They just weren't hearing it. He actually got his approved. I did not.
Are you monetized?
I'm not. No.
I think that's maybe the difference, because I think he managed to do that really alarmingly quickly.
He said a long time ago he got it done, and now apparently it's a lot harder to get monetized.
I think so. Yeah.
If anyone out there can help me get monetized on Instagram, I have 116,000 followers, and
it's
I want to be
insane to me you're not. You should be, dude, because the amount of views and stuff that you're getting.
I honestly don't know how to. I don't even know. I should look into it in more depth. I've never done it, and I really should. Not that I'm after the money. It's not what I'm about. I'm more about like sharing the content that I find. I hate using that word. I hate using the word content, but I just like finding interesting, obscure kung fu fight scenes that some people haven't seen, and say, "Hey guys, look at this." And that's basically what my Instagram started off as, and that's what it's continued to be. I'm quite proud that I've never. I'll post my podcast, and I'll post, this, for example, I'll post that on there and point people towards it. But I don't think I've ever sacrificed my integrity. I'll still continue to post clips and like rare Shaw Brothers lobby cards or something that I find. And my whole point of my Instagram was just to share the genre. And I was bizarrely very lucky to pick up as many followers as I have. I don't know why, but
I think because there's an honesty and an integrity to the way that you do stuff, and the fact that you speak about stuff with enthusiasm. I love the dynamic of your podcast. If I don't get a chance to say it elsewhere in this, because I feel for you so much, but it's like every time there's a new episode, I go into it hoping like maybe this is going to be the one.
Yep.
Maybe this is going to be one that he's going to win going to win them over, right? But usually that's not the case, but I love the fact that you still keep on, and like your enthusiasm's never diminished by like.
I just love that I'm so close to cracking the nut that is my wife. She's she's still, so she'll watch a Shaw Brothers film, she'll enjoy a Shaw Brothers film, she'll have a good time with whatever Golden Heart, whatever it may be. She'll have a good time with them, but I still haven't got to the point where on a Friday or Saturday night we'll go, oh, it's movie night, what do you feel like watching? And she'll go, how about a kung fu film? We haven't gotten there yet. Haven't gotten there. As for Cyrus, my other co-host, he's done. I can't crack him. He's gone the opposite way. He actually hates them more than when he first started the podcast. He is adamantly against the kung fu cinema genre, but sometimes I get him to give me a smile or something like, or give me like some praise because I haven't watched like a dark Korean film. He's a big fan of Korean cinema.
Okay.
As am I. I love like dark Korean thrillers. And yeah, to have him do an episode on that, he loved the I always get this wrong. I get them in the wrong order. Is it the gangster, the cop, the devil? Or is it the cop, the gangster? Yeah.
No, okay. You're right. First time.
Okay. The gangster, the cop, the devil, he absolutely loved. He had a great time with that. And I'm very lucky that I'm planning ahead a little bit, but for our October episodes this year, I'm doing like a Halloween month. And we're doing Project Wolf Hunting, which should be interesting. And we are also going to watch Midnight, the Korean thriller Midnight, which I watched recently and really enjoyed. Really enjoyed that film.
Really cool. You picked up Gun Jam Haunted Asylum as well, didn't you?
I did. I fucking love that film. We did an episode on it, and they all loved it. Cyrus and Devon both really liked it. I fucking love that film. And Second Sight, my favorite label right now, putting out Blu-rays. I love
I
Second
think
Sight.
for me at the moment, Radiance is the one that's jumped so far ahead of the pack of everybody else.
I
Right?
struggle with Radiance only because 90% of their titles, I have no idea what they are.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah,
I'm
and
completely in the dark.
don't let that freak you out, because like his Fran's taste is impeccable, and it's like I would say if you've ever liked, and I mean like really liked too short a word, if you've loved any Arrow releases in the past 15 years, right, and the kind of the ones that really made a mark for me, like Shawscope Volume 1 and Shawscope Volume 2, phenomenal kind of box sets. They're two Gamera sets, the Battles Without Honor and Humanity set.
Yes.
The basically every decent release that Arrow put out in the past 15 years was Fran. That was him. He was a driving motivating force for bringing that into fruition, right? Spun off on his own, started his own label, and had already a sort of reserve of about 800 titles, I believe, that he was kind of had lined up to be able to be released. So he has this wealth of knowledge going back from when Arrow very first put out Battle Royale for the first time on DVD like 20 years ago or something, right? That was Fran too. Like he was been there from day one, building up Arrow into what they became.
Gotcha.
And so like some of the choices he's been making, and I don't have deep enough pockets, nor would I necessarily want to pick up every single release they do, but I do pick up every Asian release that they put out. And there's been a bunch that I've not seen, and in some cases by some directors I'd never even heard of. Like I was not familiar with Taiketo. And the Taiketo releases have become some of my favorite movies I've seen in the last 10 years. Like they've been so phenomenally fresh in a way that I'm like, holy fuck, how can this have been made then? And they're sometimes shocking, sometimes really funny, sometimes like just super cool. But without exception, every single one of the Asian releases that I've watched from him, I've absolutely adored. And most of them I haven't heard of. Like jump in on the kind of the ones that I'd say are like the Shinobi no Mono box sets.
I've got that. Just picked up that. I'm very happy with that one. I've only watched the first one.
First and like 1 and 2 are the best too.
Okay.
But 3 is pretty good fun too. But 1 and 2 are incredible. He's also done I the Executioner and By a Man's Face Shall You Know Him. By a Man's Face Shall You Know Him is phenomenal. So cool, man. So cool. And in a way that I really wasn't expecting. It's kind of like Kinji Fukusaku at his best in that period, where it's got some of the kind of like the madness that you see in some of his Yakuza films, but with a much slicker, much more kind of like refined sense of filmmaking, just on a skill level. Like how expertly he works with his cinematography, really unlike anyone else from that kind of era, where it's almost like, I wonder if he had a split diopter like that way where you can get something way the fuck back still in the focus. But he does a lot of really extreme close-ups, shoots everyone from really low down, so everyone looks like these sort of mythical, incredible, heroic giants, even if they're like not that type of character. So it's like cinematography is phenomenal. The storyline's really interesting. Noboru Ando, the main actor in that, his own life is crazy. Like he was a real life Yakuza. And then Sammo Hungwei, Sammo's got that Coke bottle scar. Noboru Ando's got a massive, huge scar down one side of his face for real from when he was a Yakuza, right? So seeing him in those movies is just a trip. And he's like really a great actor too. Like it would be one thing if he was just in there as like the random, oh yeah, this guy used to be a Yakuza, but he's fundamentally an incredible actor. He's kind of got like the presence of like a McQueen or an Eastwood, where it doesn't say that much. He doesn't really need to. It's like minimal dialogue, but he says so much with his sort of presence. And he's I think they're about to put out 18 Years in Prison that he's in too. And they put out Kinji Fukusaku's Sympathy for the Underdog, which is also phenomenal. So he's just picking really cool titles, even like Black Tie Killers, which I was sure I was going to hate.
That's the one that actually made me go, I might like this one.
It's amazing. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. Like, and again, super inventive. Like, and I saw the trailer for it, and I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if that might be a bit too like hip cat for my taste, right? I don't know if I'm going to go for it, but I loved it, man. The story of it was really cool, and it was like just really entertaining. It's kind of like, have you ever seen Danger Diabolic?
I haven't. No.
Have you ever seen the music video for the Beastie Boys' Body Moving?
Oh yes, I certainly have.
Okay, that lifts enormous chunks from Danger Diabolic, and then they just replace their own faces over the main actors from Danger Dive-Box. Danger Dive-Box is an incredibly fun film, but the music video doesn't change how the footage from the movie looks at all. If anything, they just make themselves look like they could fit into that movie. And it's like the vibrancy and saturation turned up to 20, you know, it's like super, super extreme, really kind of colorful, really good fun. Black Tight Killers is exactly like that, like in a way where it's completely that type of feeling movie.
Yeah,
so
that,
cool. Really
that
cool.
Looks like the type of film I would like. I think I'd
you dig it. It's great, really cool. So yeah, he's not put a foot wrong for me so far. I think like of all the label, and you mentioned the Queen's Ransom, and there was also a time when I would probably pick up every Eureka release and every 88 Films release.
Yeah,
I'm not anymore, and the one single reason why I'm not is because I'm basically pre-ordering every Japanese release that Radiance announce, because I'm like, I'm gonna love it. I know I'll love it.
Yes, I've got my phone here, so I just want to point something out on this video. So everyone out there, right? At the moment, these are the releases we have coming out in September this year, and this is why I cannot continue to pick up every single release. So we've got To Kill a Mastermind, Erotic Ghost Story 1-3, Magnificent Bodyguards, Tai Chi Master 4K, The Shadow Boxing, The Golden Lotus, The Champions, and the Taoism Drunkard Young Taoism Fighter kind of set, a duo, I should say. That is so many. And on top of that, we're getting from Australia, we're getting a Dread 4K. And we're also getting, these are the ones I want to pick up from Arrow. Torso 4K just got announced, which I have to pick up. I love that film. And then Friday the 13th 4K, the remake. That's kind of a guilty pleasure for me. I kind of love that film too.
And Alex de la Iglesia box set. Did you see that? It's coming around.
I did see it. I'm not familiar. With that, so I kind of cast that to the side.
Well, we can have a separate conversation sometime in our weird offshoot Spanish horror podcast.
And then I believe, is it Criterion that are putting out? I think it's Criterion putting out All of Us Strangers on 4K as well. Which, if you haven't seen, that is a must. What a wonderful film. It came out last year. It's an incredible film. Really good. Yeah.
On top of that, you've also got World Noir Volume 2 from Radiance, and you've got I think a couple of others too. Yeah, they've got a few other bits and pieces. Got Tattooed Life.
Right. And that's September by itself, and it's just like, well, how the hell am I meant to afford all that? You don't sweat it. You just basically kind of prioritize. And for me, the 3 Shaw Brothers titles, I've kind of locked myself into. I don't know if you can see if I have to swing this away. That's like all of 88 Films Shaw Brothers releases. Shaw Brothers, nice.
And they're all numbered spines, right? So that's where my OCD kicks in. Like, right? So those ones I can't sell, even though I've got a few other copies of them in other places, because I don't want to break the chain. Nope. And I'll definitely pick up their next 3 Shaw Brothers movies. I've never seen The Golden Lotus, but it sounds insane.
It sounds awesome. Yes.
I have seen To Kill a Mastermind, and it is straight up phenomenal.
I have never seen that film. I'm almost
hard to find, right? It's pretty hard to find.
It's been very difficult for many years to find that.
It's basically Sun Chung doing his own 5 Deadly Venoms, kind of, right? It's got very much that sort of feel. But I wonder how much like the guys who made the Mortal Kombat game had seen that movie, because like who was the guy that had the spinning hat in Mortal Kombat?
Kung Lao.
There's a character that's almost just a straight up Kung Lao in that movie.
Really?
He's got like a kind of almost like a Flying Deadly Guillotines style blade, but just on the top of his hat. And sometimes he'll take it off and chuck it. Sometimes he'll hold the hat. Very cool. And Shadow Boxing is also absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Shadow Boxing in years, decades even. And for those 3 titles to pop out to be 2 that I've never seen, and then 1 that I haven't seen in decades, I'm just like itching to get my hands on them. Yeah, can't wait. And then we've got like, you know, the 4K releases, Tai Chi Master and Bodyguards of Beijing. I kind of have to pick up. So yeah.
It's a wonderful time, dude. It's a wonderful time.
It's incredible. It's incredible. So I will just briefly, we'll probably wrap up pretty quickly, but I've just got a few random questions for you that I have to ask, because I ask everyone these questions. Let's say, who's your favorite Asian cinema actor? I know that's tough. If you have a top 3, top 5, whatever, who is your go-to? Who is the one that you kind of cannot pass up?
Difficult. Very difficult. and depends on kind of eras. Like overall, probably from Hong Kong, still probably would be a tie-up between Chow Yun-fat and Gordon Liu.
Yeah.
I adore, like, I would pretty much go out of my way to see any movie that came along that they were in, and that would be how I define my sort of go-to. In South Korean terms, Lee Byung-hun is probably way up there for me on that regard too, where he just constantly surprises me. And I think Japanese-wise at the moment, because it changes a lot with Japanese cinema, I've been trying to kind of go through as many Raizo Ichikawa, the guy from Shinobi no Mono, because he's a really interesting dude and died tragically young. And the more of his movies that I see, I'm just like, fuck, how did I not see this 20 years ago? There's an amazing film called Sword of Doom that a lot of people have probably familiar with.
Great. I think I have it somewhere.
That's a straight up remake of a series of 3 movies that Raizo made 10 years before. Deeper dive into that character, and he plays it in a way, I wouldn't say it's better than, because I love Nakadai, who's in the Sword of Doom version, right? But the Raizo version, different feel, but same character, same story. Just and there's 3 of them. Satan's Sword, they're called. So he's probably my current Japanese actor, but it changes, it evolves all the time.
I'm with you. I asking you that question is just, it's too difficult because I think our tastes change so often. It's just like I'm on a massive John Woo kick at the moment. I'm kind of revisiting John Woo at the moment. Kind of films that I just haven't watched for a long time, such a Bullet in the Head I haven't watched in a long time, and I really want to visit. I want to revisit John Woo. And I want to visit for the first time, and I don't know why this is such a huge blind spot for me, but Ringo Lam is a huge blind spot for me.
Same. A lot of it was just getting access. Hard to track them down.
Yeah, and I really want. Funny enough, there's a story. So I got this T-shirt.
Hey,
cool. Which it's funny. I was in a supermarket this morning, and someone saw my T-shirt, and they went, "You're a film director?" And I was just like, "Well, okay, you're obviously not aware of who John Woo is. I'm not wearing my own T-shirt, and I probably don't look like a John Woo either, to be honest." But
you never know.
I should have taken the credit. I should have been. Have you heard of
my film Hard Boiled?
Yeah, you should watch Hard Boiled. I had countless. I slaved over that for countless days. But yeah, that was a short story that I had. Yes, I'm revisiting John Woo. Looking forward to more Ringo Lam being released. And in terms of actors, it's just all over the place. I mean, it's just we're just being hit with such a wealth of actors that I've never even heard of. Some people are just coming to the forefront that I've just never ever watched, and I'm loving it. These more girls with guns films that I hadn't seen, and just I don't know. I think the future's bright. Maybe people saying that Blu-rays aren't going to be made anymore or whatever. Fair enough. If you think that way, fair enough. And I understand kind of the doom and gloom of that if that's your thing. But for me, the future's looking bright.
Same dude.
Especially as an Asian cinema fan, I think we're just going to get more and more. And, the fact that we're still, we just got one Bruceploitation set and there's another one apparently around the corner, although I believe that is a fact.
Definitely, yes.
And then God knows how many Shaw Brothers Arrow sets we're going to get.
At least another 2. 3 and 4 definitely coming.
It's just wonderful time. So I'm very, very happy. And so here's to the future of Asian cinema.
Long may it rain. Do you have any more rapid fire questions?
I did, but I was just like, I understand that they're so tough. I was going to ask you, like, at the moment, whether it's a top 3 of all time in terms of, and I don't mean like a solid top 3 because that's so hard, but like, do you have a solid 3 that you always go back to, like maybe a comfort few movies or ones that you can always rely on to watch an excellent Asian cinema film?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Like Dirty Ho. In some ways, it's always like I couldn't love that movie any more than I do.
Really? That's so fascinating.
Absolutely adore it. I would happily do a separate sit down. Like we will do a commentary.
I'm not kidding. We may have to do something like that because I would love to discuss Dirty Ho because there's a lot to that film.
Yeah. At one point, there's a movie that Time Out called the very highest benchmark that the kung fu genre had ever reached, and I might not disagree with that.
It's
It's a
so
phenomenal movie. It's
funny because I cannot do that one for my podcast because
mm,
it will drive my wife crazy. It's too strange. It's
mm.
too the humor is too otherworldly at times, and I think it will baffle her. And she, if anyone doesn't watch the podcast, my wife quote unquote hates shenanigans in kung fu films. So
There's a lot of
films
that.
like Dirty Ho and The Miracle Fighters, or a
Yeah.
lot of Yung Woo Ping's filmography would blow her mind. So I think I would love to do something. Maybe we should do that. Maybe we should work out some kind of
No, maybe about it. Let's make that
yes.
happen.
We should do that. Yeah.
I'll,
Okay. Awesome.
I'll give you two more, and I think
Yeah.
I'm going to jump around a little bit because I think I'll maybe take my 2 and 3 as movies that I would hope that more people get a chance to see and they maybe haven't, right? So I would go, because I don't just want to kind of pick, I could pick Hardboiled and The Killer all day, every day, but that's not that interesting for other people. So I think let's maybe go to South Korea, and I would say give The Hunt a chance, because I feel it didn't get enough of praise.
I've just picked that up and I haven't watched it yet.
I really, really enjoyed it. And that's like the main actor is also the director. It's Lee Jae-jung, who's currently in the Acolyte series, and really kind of grinds my gears, pisses me off that almost every single YouTube channel that speaks about the Acolyte just calls him Squid Games guy.
Horrible.
I find that low level disrespectful, given that dude's had an amazing career in South Korea. Directed not that many movies. I don't think The Hunt is his debut as a director. He's acted in a whole score of phenomenal movies and in so many different genres, but I think The Hunt's a wonderful culmination of his skill and a really promising start as a director. Can't wait to see what he does next, because it's so well directed, right? So The Hunt would be number 2, and let's kind of round up with number 3. And I would say if people have streaming, those will be easy for them to find, and it's going to be 2 movies, not 1, and it's the 2 Fable films. So
again, the films I've yet to see.
I adore those movies so much. Right, they're as kind of recent comedies that have really well executed action, but they're not really action movies. They're really straight up comedies. They genuinely made me like belly laugh, which is quite rare for me. I love the main actor who's in both the films, and there's a great ensemble cast assembled around him. They're hysterically funny. The action, when it does come round, is very, very, very well done. And I adore them. And I think they're on Netflix, so it's nice to kind of give people something they can quite easily find.
They are, I've had them in my queue for God knows how long, and I just have never gone on.
You'll adore them. You'll absolutely adore them. I've known you well enough now to know your sense of humor, and I think you'll get a massive kick out of them. And I kind of would be willing to actually bet that your wife might enjoy them too, even though some of it could be defined as shenanigans, but it's a different sort of shenanigans than kung fu shenanigans. So,
yeah, she can tolerate modern shenanigans a little more than the old school kung fu stuff. So
she'll be okay.
Okay, maybe I'll sit down with her and see. I've got so many films I need to introduce her to. It's crazy.
Push them up the list. They're great. And I'd say probably because my wife is desperate to eat, I will say last rapid fire question, and then we'll
simple question: is Twilight of the Warriors Walled In going to be the best film of the year?
It is for me, absolutely, hands down. It is for me, and it's also, I think, the absolute culmination of everything that Kenji has learned. Kenji Tanigaki, who you mentioned earlier on at the beginning of this, to bring it first, I had the joy of sitting down with when he couldn't really speak about Twilight of the Warriors at the time that I sat down with him. But he kind of told me where it was at, right? But we spoke about a bunch of other stuff, and I'll plug my own interview with him. So go and please check out my interview with Kenji, because Kenji is just, for me, the best kind of action director working currently in modern cinema. And Twilight of the Warriors gives him a chance to flex everything that he's learned to date. So it's far and away the best thing he's ever done in Hong Kong. I would put it way up there with his Japanese work, and I adore his Rurouni Kenshin work. I think that's like beyond first class, and you can see him almost doing a kind of little greatest hits. If he's lifted a bunch of stuff from Rurouni Kenshin and put it into there. It's a movie that will weird a bunch of people out in the way where it takes a real turn in the third act into somewhere that, if you're not a fan of the sort of stuff that we undoubtedly are, given everything we've just spoken about, it will throw some people for a loop, because it turns hard into shenanigans at a certain point, right? And I'm right there for it, and fucking loved it. When
my wife loved it, though. My wife loved the film. So
okay,
Yeah, it's that's a
Seeing
testament to how good it is, you know.
seeing Philip Ing snapping blades with his teeth made my year, right? He was
Wonderful.
so good in that movie, right? I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And the fact that we're getting a prequel and a sequel for me is just gimme, gimme, gimme. I can't wait
Wonderful.
to see what they do next. I
Me either.
absolutely adored it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm probably not allowed to announce this, but I'm going to announce it anyway. If I have to edit it out, I have to edit it out. I just got let's say a link to Baby Assassins 3 to watch that. So I'm quite excited about I'll be doing a review for a website. So it's a screener link. It's all above board. Don't worry, anyone. I'll be doing a review for a particular website as part of the New York Asian Film Festival.
Cool,
Yeah, I'm hopefully going to watch that over the next few days. So I'm excited for that one.
I
But
suspect
please,
that'll be very good, but I don't know if that'll top.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm having high hopes, but I don't think it will.
I've also got high hopes for Alien Romulus, but that's a different conversation. But and again, I don't think it's going to top Twilight of the Warriors for me. But I really desperately hope it's good.
Yes, yeah, Alien Romulus looks fantastic. Let me let you go and eat. Please apologize to your wife for me. Apologize for keeping you so long, but please,
we could have done this for twice as long.
You know what? I'm absolutely with you. We should do it again and come up with some more subjects, and we should get that Dirty Ho video. But that's an offline conversation. But please let everyone know where they can find you online.
Just as the Fanatical Dragon on YouTube. Same on Instagram. Twitter, I think annoyingly, I can't have the Fanatical Dragon as too many characters for their username, so I think it is Fanatical Dragon, so just DRAGN. But there's links to all that sort of stuff. So my YouTube channel is Ground Zero. From there they can kind of find all my other sort of stuff, and YouTube's really the only one that I'm heavily invested in. I dabble with Instagram, I dabble with Twitter, but I thoroughly enjoy having my YouTube channel and really enjoy like getting to chat with people there. So like jump over there, check out a video, leave me a comment. I try and respond to everyone. At the moment the channel's of a size I still can, and I get a kick out of doing it. So long as you're not a dick. If you are a dick, I'll absolutely just delete the comment. I get a bunch of people calling me names every so often. Weirdly, it happens, right? It's usually only if I talk about Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan, and then that sort of brings a certain type of person out that would work sometimes. But for the most part, 99.99% of people are super cool, and I love chatting to them there. So yeah, jump over to the YouTube channel, and maybe next time round we will do something over at my neck of the woods. I will kind of get you round to mine.
I would love to. For everyone watching this, thank you so much. Please leave a comment down below. I would love to comment on your comments and have a chat. Did you enjoy this conversation? Do you have any more questions for us that we could talk about? Are you looking forward to us maybe chatting about Dirty Ho in the future? Please let me know.
Do you want a dedicated US-UK visa chat?
There you go. We can do that for you. We can do a 4-hour conversation about visas. Yeah, so the usual stuff, like, comment, and if you do like what you see on this channel, please think about subscribing. I would really appreciate that. That would be lovely.
Definitely. I would second that. Your channel's awesome, man. I'm sure you're going to be hitting 1,000 in no time at all. It's going to be a rapid success. You definitely will, man. You definitely will.
Fingers crossed. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to you, Fanatical Dragon, for being on the channel. Really appreciate you. This was honestly a wonderful conversation. Like you said, I think we could have gone for another 2 hours, if not longer. Easily. And I hope to do a part 2 in the future. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We appreciate you. And I'm not signing off very well. This is the bit where I stumble. See, I'm not going to edit any of this out, but this is the bit where I stumble, saying the last part. But I'm just going to say thank you, everyone, and I'll catch you next time.